What's up everyone, back at it again with another speedrun. Today we're going to speedrun LAW036 from chapter 1 till chapter 3. Without further ado, let's go. But before that, we must first know that in LAW036 there will be a lot of terms and lingo that will be used. So it is important that we understand these terms, as the definitions will give us an understanding to what those terms mean, and from there we can write our own descriptions on these terms. So moving on to chapter 1, Introduction to Social Psychology. So we must first know the definition, or we must first get to know what social psychology is. And from Robert A. Barron, social psychology refers to a scientific field that seeks to understand the nature and causes of individual behavior and thought in social situations. Some of the variables to understand social behavior, we have 4, which will be cognitive process, characteristics of people, environmental variables, and also biological factors. So cognitive process means that we cognitive process?
Understand the behavior of people.
So we understand the behavior of people. Second will be characteristics of people. This refers to how people dress and how people act, and that will give us an idea of how they carry themselves in the public. Third will be environmental variables. Of course, our perception or our behavior will change and alter throughout the macam seasons. Kalau panas kita senang marah, kalau sejuk ataupun mendung kita macam let low, kita relax sikit. And fourth, biological factors. While this may not play an important role because this only influences a little bit on our understanding of social behavior, it does play a small or minuscule role because our traits are passed down by our parents, which have been passed down by their parents, and so on and so forth. One of the research methodologies for understanding social behaviors, we have 3, which will be systematic observation, correlation, and also experiment. For systematic observation, we have 2 branches, which will be survey, which means that we will survey people from different backgrounds and all that. We ask different questions to them to determine to get to a conclusion or an answer. Second will be field research. Senang cerita, kita sendiri turun padang untuk lakukan research tersebut. We look at the people in a particular setting or society to come up with a conclusion. Second will be correlation. We have 3 branches in correlation, which will be positive, negative, and no correlation. So we will look at correlation in terms of graph. For positive correlation, we can refer to the graph of directly proportional, where if an increase of a variable in one situation if a variable in situation A increases, there will also be an increase of variable in situation B, and vice versa. Kalau A naik, B naik. Kalau A turun, B turun. Macam tu. For negative correlation, we will refer to the inversely proportional graph, which says that an increase of variable in situation A will lead to a decrease of variables in situation B. Senang cerita, kalau A naik, B turun. Kalau B turun, A naik. Third one is no correlation, which is self-explanatory. If there is an increase or decrease in variables in situation A, there will be no change in situation B punya variable. Next to experiment method. In an experiment, there must be 2 variables. Dalam sains kita belajar manipulated and also responding variable. In social psychology, we call it independent variable, which will be MV, and also the dependent variable, which will be RV. Fourth and final methodology for research will be archival research, which refers to textual documents from organizations, and it helps us better understand the information from a particular organization or a particular company. Okay, moving on to some of the ethics in social psychology research. We will deal with 4 things, which will be deception. Deception is to withhold or conceal info about the purpose of study. So this aims to get the most genuine results from a particular group of participants. So from there, kita akan simpan sesetengah info berkaitan dengan research kita supaya reaction daripada kita punya participants lebih genuine, lebih real tau. Sebab kalau orang dah tahu kenapa kita buat research yang kita tengah buat ni, mungkin beberapa response ataupun reaction of those participants akan terganggu, macam dia tak genuine daripada diri diorang sendiri. Okay, but sometimes deceptions can be harmful because some of the more extreme or more radical punya experiments, they will deal with a lot of various types of social issues. So deception must be paired with debriefing, which will be the second issue of ethics in social psychology research. Debriefing refers to debriefing is conducted after an experiment concludes, and it aims to provide a full description of study to the participants, which includes revealing deception. So when we have deceived the participants, we must also debrief them and say that, oh, okay, sir or madam, this is our research. Our research is to do this, to achieve this, and also you have been temporarily decepted by doing this, and our aim is to collect data from this. From your response or from your reaction, we have concluded that this. Macam tu lah. So this debriefing reveals all the information that is pertaining to that particular experiment. Okay, third ethics in social psychology research will be informed consent. This is where we get a group of participants to consent either verbally or in black and white to be participating in our research. So this is crucial as participants may sustain implications which will be lifelong or permanent. This can be seen in the monster study in which two groups of orphans have been subjected to an experiment. Basically, satu dapat layanan baik, satu dapat layanan buruk. So the group that has received bad treatment from the experiment has sustained lifelong implications even though they have given their consent to participate in that study. One major experiment or one famous experiment that sees the risk outweigh the benefits from informed consent was in the Stanford Prison Experiment. So korang boleh tengok lah, Stanford Prison Experiment banyak sangat cover dekat YouTube. In Malay tak tahu, tapi in English banyak sangat. Korang boleh tengok. So it basically says that even with given consent, an experiment could go cattywampus. Dia boleh jadi a disaster walaupun ada orang bagi consent untuk masuk eksperimen tersebut. Fourth and final ethics in social psychology research will be privacy. Of course, we as researchers must not violate participants' privacy. Contohnya, kita gather data dalam toilet. Toilet tu kan private areas. Basically, we cannot touch any private areas when we conduct our study. We must also protect the anonymity and confidentiality of participants, such as their criminal records, their education background, their salary, all that. Semua benda yang kita tak bagi tahu orang, kita tak patut reveal in our research. And also, the revelation of these infos could lead to privacy issues that can macam discredit kita lah. Moving on to chapter 2, which will be the self. So in chapter 1, we have been introduced to the social psychology as a scientific field. Secondly, the second chapter will talk about ourselves. Macam mana kita nak tengok diri kita sebagai individu di dunia ini. Macam tu. A definition of the self is how someone perceives himself or herself, and it is developed by social interaction. Okay, moving on to the various principles and also terms in this chapter. First, the looking glass self. This basically means that how we perceive ourselves is based on how other people look at us. For example, if people say that we are funny based on the jokes we tell and based on the fact that they laugh to our jokes, we may perceive ourselves as outgoing or funny or easygoing macam tu. Apa yang kita pandang dekat diri kita adalah based on apa yang orang lain pandang ataupun apa yang orang lain bagi tahu kita. Macam tu lah. Okay, second will be self-schema. This refers to how we conduct ourselves in terms of what we say, what we do, what we think, and this is largely based on our upbringing. For example, most people, I don't know if most people lah, tapi Some people, when they wake up in the morning, they will brush their teeth first before having breakfast. Also, some people will have breakfast first, then only they will brush their teeth. So both instances are an example of self-schema, which they have developed throughout their childhood or upbringing, and they have incorporated the self-schema into their daily lives. Macam tu. It refers to our routines and all that. All of those are self-schema. Third will be self-serving bias. This is the tendency for us to view ourselves favorably. So, an example of this to help better illustrate the self-serving bias, when we get good grades, we will tend to credit ourselves for our hard work. But when we get bad grades, we will tend to blame the lecturers for being too boring or too straightforward. We may also blame macam external factors lah. So we credit ourselves for our achievements, but we blame others for our shortcomings. Okay, the fourth theory will be the self-awareness theory. This is the psychological state in which people are aware of their traits, feelings and behavior. So this is divided into three, which will be subjective self-awareness, objective self-awareness, and also symbolic self-awareness theory. Moving on to the first, subjective self-awareness theory is the ability to differentiate ourselves from our environment. This means that we can differentiate ourselves as an individual with our environment. So for example, I'm sitting in my dorm room, I can differentiate myself from the rest of the dorm room, including the other members and the bottles and the desks and the chairs and all that. Second will be objective self-awareness. This is the ability to recognize ourselves as an independent being and evaluate based on internal standards developed through our life. So this refers to our standards as a human being, and these standards have been developed throughout our early years and our upbringing. Third will be symbolic self-awareness theory. It's the ability to think about ourselves and use language and symbols to represent ourselves. This is in the verbal punya way lah, macam mana kita nak express ourselves in verbal and also written ways and all that. Moving on to personality, this is another term in the self in chapter 2. Personality, it's a combination of behavior and mental structures, and basically this is how others perceive us, as having different personalities, and it differs among people lah. Jadi apa yang orang nampak dekat kita, itulah personality kita. There are two types of personalities, namely the dynamic and the consistent personality. So the dynamic personality is a personality of a person which changes throughout their life. After they gain new experiences, they meet new people and they do a lot of things, and their initial personality will change and bend and mold throughout their life after having these experiences throughout their life lah. Second will be consistent personality. This personality is less susceptible to change, meaning to say after various encounters with many people, after going through various accidents, their personality remains the same. Most people will say that even though they have gone through a lot of things in their life, they are the same. You are the same all you. Macam tu. Kau tak berubah pun walaupun kau dah lalui banyak benda. Okay. Moving on to the next term, which is self-knowledge. This is the understanding of our abilities, limitations, and what we are capable and incapable of doing. This falls under self-knowledge lah. And that's about it. For introspection, this refers to us privately thinking of who we are, and we tend to consult our feelings, motives and desires. So this is done more in the private setting. When we are alone, kita selalu fikir macam, kenapa aku macam ni, kenapa aku macam tu, kenapa aku buat macam ni, kenapa aku tak buat macam tu. We always think of these things, and it is called introspection. However, deep introspection does not always foster self-insight, which means that the foolproofness of introspection is very low, meaning to say, even though we introspect ourselves a lot and for long periods of time for long periods at a time, it does not always come true what we think of ourselves, because we also need external factors to compensate for the lack of clarity in our minds. Because even though we introspect ourselves, we also have a certain bias that makes us more favorable than others. Macam tu. Moving on to the observer standpoint. Observer standpoint is basically how people in observer standpoint, Pronin and Ross in 2006 have said that other people are more accurate in predicting our behavior than we are. This means that, macam aku cakap tadi, other people, external factors, third parties are more capable of knowing who we are than we ourselves know who we are. That's why usually when we retrospect our actions and decisions, we always have to take a third party standpoint, third party perspective in order to know ourselves better. Because if we take the first or second party in retrospective thinking, we might be unable to see clearly the actions and implications of our actions in the society. Okay, moving on to impression management. This refers to the conscious or unconscious effort to influence perceptions, decisions, opinions of others. This refers to how we want others to perceive us, or how we want to make a good impression. So how do we make these good impressions? We will have to look at self-presentation. Self-presentation refers to the efforts to make a favorable impression, or from the words of Hall and Zrajewski and Yapped in 2009, they say that self-presentation is an effort to produce a favorable first impression. So how do we foster a favorable first impression? There are 6 methods which will be self-promotion, verbal claims, using props, self-verification perspective, ingratiation, and also self-deprecating. So verbal claims and also self-promotion. These two are very similar, in which that we testify for ourselves, our abilities and our achievements, in order for people to make good impressions about us. So we tend to promote our abilities, promote what we have done throughout our life, so that people have a very good impression of our abilities, and they can macam refer to us if they need things that pertain to our expertise. Okay, the third method is using props. This is basically how we dress. We dress nicely to fit the occasion or to fit the expertise or field that we want to pursue. Contohnya, kalau kita nak masuk dalam kerja office yang macam executive punya kerja, we tend to dress more professionally in terms of wearing ties and also wearing suits, and also, macam cara kita bawa diri tu adalah dengan using props. Macam kita pakai baju yang fit that expertise that we want to promote ourselves in, that is using props. Fourth will be the self-verification perspective. We will make friends and also we will mix with people that will verify our perspective and also our achievements, as well as our abilities. Yeah, macam tu. And fifth will be ingratiation. Ingratiation is basically in Malay we call it bodekan. Kita bodek orang untuk orang tu suka kepada kita and bagi testimoni yang baik kepada kita. Six is self-deprecating. This means that we tend to undermine our abilities and make people expect less of us, even though our abilities are much more higher or better than what we have said. Contohnya, saya pandai melukis. Orang kata, "Ui, pandai tu kau melukis." Lepas tu saya cakap lah, "Taklah, saya biasa je." Macam tu. Walaupun kita tahu yang kita pandai melukis ataupun pandai menyanyi, anything lah, pandai melukis, pandai menyanyi, pandai menulis, pandai cakap, pandai menari, pandai apa-apa je, anything that we are an expert in, when people say that we are good in it, we tend to undermine. We say, "Oh no, I'm just normal, I'm just a little bit better, I'm not that good." Macam tu lah. Okay, we're moving on to self-esteem. Self-esteem is the degree to which we perceive ourselves positively and negatively. So self-esteem and confidence are two different things. Confidence, okay, let's take the perspective of a bully. So a bully is confident. Kenapa dia confident? Because they bully you in public. Kau kena bully depan orang ramai tau. Jadi dia confident untuk bully kau depan orang ramai. But does he have the perception of positivity towards himself? Not necessarily. He may look at himself as someone who is not in life. Contohnya dia tak bagus dalam ni, tak bagus dalam tu, tapi dia still confident untuk bully kau. Even though dia confident untuk bully kau, he perceives himself negatively, and therefore he does not have a high self-esteem because he perceives himself negatively. Macam tu. Mana? Okay, self-esteem, in the words of Williams in 2001, he says that being excluded or left out by other people can lower self-esteem, because when we feel left out, we feel that we perceive ourselves negatively. We, in a sense that we may think that we lack something or we are incompetent to that group, macam tu. So it can lower our self-esteem. Moving on to social identity theory, we have 3 stages, which will be social categorization, social identification, and also social comparison. So these 3 are important in forming a social identity. So what is social identity? Our identity as a group. Itulah. Social identity is an identity of ourselves as a group or belonging to a group. So the first step, which will be social categorization, it refers to us identifying and also knowing the type of environment we're going to associate ourselves with. Contohnya, saya nak masuk ke dalam kelab ataupun channel orang minat bola. So first, social categorization. I will identify the minat and also the minat dalam bahasa Inggeris apa? The interest of that group or channel, so that I can fit in to the group. Macam tu. So first is we identify the environment. Second, identification, we adopt the identity of the particular group that we're going to join. I have identified that the group or the chat that I'm going to enter likes football. So I will adopt the identity of that group, which is liking football, before I go into the group. So once I have adopted the liking for football, I can mix and also I can interact with the members of the group better. Macam tu. So kita identify, kita juga akan adopt that particular mindset ataupun that particular interest of that group. Third will be comparison. We compare ourselves to other groups. Once I have categorized, I have identified, I will now compare my group to other groups. For example, I may compare the group of liking football with the group that likes rugby, for example, that like track and field, macam tu. So kita identify, kita categorize, in other words, kita kenal pasti group tu suka apa. Second, kita identification, kita akan adopt that particular group punya interest. Third, we compare ourselves with other groups, macam tu. Okay, in comparison, we have 2, which will be intra-group and inter-group. Intra-group comparison refers to comparison between individuals of the same group. So saya compare diri saya dengan orang lain dalam group peminat bola tu. Itu adalah intra-group comparison. Inter-group comparison refers to the comparison between groups. Macam tadi, kami sebagai peminat bola akan compare diri kami dengan peminat rugby, macam tu. Moving on to social comparison, there will be upward and downward comparison. So upward social comparison means that kita tak boleh macam mana nak cakap? Upward social comparison. This is my friend Imran. Kita tengok buku. Upward. Oh shit. Sekejap ya gang. Oh okay. So Upward social comparison is us comparing ourselves to other people who have better status or better lives than us. For example, if I am in the makeup industry lah senang tak, fashion industry, Malaysian fashion industry, I may look up to brands like Nilofa, brands like Siti Khadijah, brands that have better conditions or better macam better situations than us. Contohnya betul lah macam tu. So kita akan look up to people who have better situations than us, and that is called upward social comparison. Downward social comparison adalah lebih senang, in which we have to be grateful for what we have. Contohnya, aku lapar hari ni. Weh, kau janganlah macam ni. Budak Afrika hari-hari lapar macam tu. Macam, weh, kenapa tak ada air? Hari ni kenapa tak ada air? Kenapa air slow? Kau let macam orang Afrika hari-hari tak ada air. Macam tu lah lebih kurang. Okay, we are done with the second chapter. Tengok, 2 chapter 26 minit. 036 ni memang banyak. So, moving on to the third and final chapter, which will be social perception, perceiving and understanding others. So, we are done with the introduction of social psychology. We have known ourselves. Now, we will know more about other people. Okay. Definition of social perception is the process through which we seek to know and understand others. Moving on to non-verbal communications punya types. Non-verbal communication refers to communication between individuals involving an unspoken language. So it is unspoken, and the language may vary and have different types. First type, facial expression. So in the words of Cicero, the face is the image of the soul. So facial expression may convey a lot of emotions, mainly emotions, which have 6 main emotions in the world, which are anger, fear, happiness, sadness, surprise and disgust. So facial expressions help us convey emotions, as in the words of Cicero, it is the image of the soul. It is how we convey our feelings through facial expression. Second, eye contact. Various poets from dari masa silam say that eyes are the windows to the soul. So basically dalam eye contact ni, it talks about how people like us based on their eye contact. It is found that high levels of eye contact has been associated with high liking of the person. Contohnya, kalau crush saya cakap dengan saya, so saya pandang dia lama-lama tau. High eye contact, high levels of eye contact means saya suka dia. Saya pandang dia lama-lama, maksudnya saya suka crush saya, macam tu. But prolonged levels of eye contact will lead to staring. Staring ni adalah when we look at people, no matter what they do, what they say, and we don't break that eye contact, that may lead people to feel uncomfortable, macam tu. Third will be body movements. Body movements are cues provided by position, posture, movement of body or body parts. So body movements are associated with emblems. Now, what is emblems? Emblems are body movements that convey specific feelings or specific feelings. Contohnya, kalau saya senyum sambil buat macam ni, saya mungkin happy. Tapi kalau saya buat macam ni, saya tak senyum, lepas tu saya cross kaki saya, mungkin saya tak selesa. Kalau buat macam ni, sebab saya tengah faham benda yang awak nak cakap, saya buat macam ni. So itu maksudnya adalah saya a little bit confused dengan apa awak cakap. So emblems are related to our feelings that has been represented by our body movements, like that. Fourth will be postures, which means different body orientations. So large scale body movements provide info about emotions. Ini pasal ballet dancers lah. Saya tak ingat pasal apa, but basically large scale body movements such as how we sit, how we stand, how we walk, those will provide info about our emotions and also our experiences in our life. Fifth will be touching. Touching has two subparts, which will be handshakes and the pat on the arm. So a general some general info about touching. Its meaning depends on various factors. There are three. The first one is who touches, second the nature of the touch, and third the context. So for the first one, who touches, it can be our friend, it can be our mother, it can be our father, our teachers, anyone who touches. That is the first requirement or first factor in the meaning of touches and the various factors of touches. Second will be nature. What is the nature of the touch? Is it firm? Is it soft? Is it long? Is it short? Maksudnya saya pegang awak lama-lama ke, I hold on to you for a short period of time, or if I grip on your shoulder kuat-kuat, or if I only pat on your shoulder macam tu. That is nature of touch. Third will be context. What is the setting that the touch takes place in? Is it in the doctor's office, in the classroom, in anywhere? The context plays an important role as well. So these three make up the meaning of touches to various people across various different cultures and also experiences. Okay, we'll move on to the first aspect of touch, which is handshake. Handshake is the one acceptable way people in different cultures touch strangers. So when we meet different people, we meet new people whom we are not keen ataupun who we don't really know, the handshake is a way of expressing our social skills and also social openness to different people and new people. And the way that we convey is by handshake lah. It is the way that we meet different people. Although some countries in Asia adopt the way of bowing to others, such as Japan, it is still acceptable to practice handshakes there because it is universal. And okay, seventh is the pat on the arm. Pat on the arm. Most people will feel more comfortable when, regardless of men or women, when women touch them, when women pat them on the arm. Itu je lah, itu je info yang aku dapat. Okay, we're moving on to recognizing deception. We have 5 micro expressions, interchannel discrepancies, eye contact, exaggerated facial expressions, and also aspects of speech. Moving on to micro expressions. Micro expressions refers to how our face express different feelings towards people lah. For example, if someone that I don't like calls out my name and I wasn't facing them, the microsecond that my face makes the expression of not liking that person when I look at them shows that person that I do not like them. Faham tak? Faham tak, Im? Okay, so maksudnya korang akan faham lah. Second will be interchannel discrepancies, which are inconsistencies in body language that we have touched earlier. For example, if someone lies to us, if someone deceives us, he may have a strong or normal eye contact with us, but his body language may differ or may may clash with the concept of his eye contact. Contoh, kalau saya pandang awak macam biasa, saya tengah tipu awak ni, I'm lying to you, I'm looking at you macam biasa, I don't break eye contact, I don't stare at you, but my body movement macam ni ke macam tu je, inconsistent with each other. That is called interchannel discrepancies. Third, eye contact. Like I said, people who lie will either break eye contact or they will move their eyes in erratic ways. Macam tu. They don't maintain a good and also a stable eye contact with the person they're talking to. Fourth, exaggerated facial expressions. This is referring to exaggerated facial expressions lah. When we are normally happy, we smile macam biasa. Tapi kalau kita tengah tipu orang, we may have an exaggerated smile. Macam tu. Okay, korang tahu tak analog horror yang pasal orang-orang yang muka distorted tu? So, sometimes we will look at these pictures and we will say that, oh, he is not human because his smile is exaggerated. Macam tu lah. Dia macam facial expression kita yang melebih tau, sebab kita tengah tipu orang. Okay, macam tu. Fifth and final one is aspect of speech. When we lie, we may speak in the higher tone, or we may get angrier, and we may get angry faster. That is aspects of speech. How we differ in terms of speech when we lie versus when we are telling the truth. Okay, now we're moving on to attribution. Attribution is the process of seeking and identifying causes of others' behaviors. That's the definition. Okay, attribution has a few sources of error. The first one is the actor-observer bias. This is the tendency to attribute our own behavior to situational causes, but others' behavior to dispositional causes. What is dispositional causes? It's basically internal causes, how we act. Macam tu lah, internal. So an example of this is when we see people littering, we may say that he is irresponsible for littering. But when we litter, we may blame the fact that there's no trash bins nearby, which has resulted in us littering. Okay, second will be correspondent bias, tendency to overlook potential external causes to others' behavior. Okay, for example, my friend has bought a cup of espresso, hot espresso. So when he reaches to grab it, he accidentally spilled the whole cup on the table. We may, as the outside observer, we may conclude that he is clumsy for spilling his coffee, but for him, he spilled the coffee because the cup itself was too hot for him to hold on to it. So that has led to the spillage of the coffee itself. But we as observers, we don't think of that. We think of his clumsiness as the reason why he spilled the coffee. Okay, moving on to the third sources of error, which will be self-serving bias. We have covered this a little bit in the previous chapter 1, but there are two basically models or two causes of self-serving bias. First one is cognitive model, second is motivational explanation. Cognitive model is the belief that we have the right to succeed in certain situations. So if I think that I have the right to succeed, or I have the ability to succeed in my maths exam, when I actually succeed in maths exam, I will blame my internal factor or my hardworking self for achieving that particular grade lah that I desire. But the motivational explanation is the tendency for us to maintain or even increase our self-esteem. So by taking credit for our accomplishments, we are either maintaining or we are increasing our self-esteem. Kita nak perceive ourselves more positively as a result of our achievements. Okay, moving on to the impression formation. This refers to the process of forming impressions, and what is important in impressions is first impressions. So how we perceive people for the first 5-10 seconds are very crucial in determining determining our impression to that particular person. Moving on to attitude. It is a favorable or unfavorable reaction towards something or someone rooted in one's belief and exhibited through feelings and behavior. It is how we perceive a situation or a person based on our individual beliefs, and it is being conveyed upon to other people in the form of how we speak, how we act to other people. Faham? Okay. So there are a few functions of attitude. Actually, not a few. There are a lot of functions of attitude. First is utilitarian. What this means that the attitude enables people to attain particular goals or avoid undesired circumstances. So we may perceive ourselves, or we may change our attitudes based on situations to favor our goals and to avoid reaching unfavorable situations or unfavorable conclusions ataupun decisions. Kita tukar kita punya attitude untuk dapatkan apa yang kita nak dan untuk elak apa yang kita tak nak, macam tu. Second one is knowledge. So attitudes make certain things or situations understandable. For example, if I understand the attitude of my friend and I see him doing a particular thing that relates to his attitude, I now understand that his actions are based on his attitude, which I understand. Faham? Tak faham? Okay. Knowledge ni, for example, I know my friend Imran punya attitude. Dia ni macam ni, macam ni, macam ni. So, one day I see him doing one particular thing that may be offensive or may cause macam confusion to others. But because of me knowing his attitude, or because of me knowing how he acts in different situations, I can understand more clearly the context and the reasons of his actions just now. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, third one is ego defensive. This refers to us recasting info in less damaging ways. For example, I smoke and aku tak ingat contoh ni, sorry. Sekejap. Okay, so even though I smoke, I not necessarily think that it is a bad thing. I tend to downplay the severity of a situation to favor my ego or to favor my pride as a human. Macam tu. I smoke, I think I know that it is not good, but I downplay it as something that is not good lah. Macam mana cakap? Aku tahu benda tu baik, aku tahu benda tu buruk, tapi aku pandang dalam diri aku tahu, aku pandang yang smoking ni tak berapa buruk pun sebenarnya, macam tu. To fit into our ego. Apa?
Selagi tak jejas kita punya
selagi tak jejas kita punya health ke apa-apalah, we tend to hold that information to suit our ego, macam tu. Okay, fourth will be value expressive. This refers to our expression of values integral to our self-concept. So our attitude will more or less shine a light on how we conceive ourselves, how we form concepts of ourselves, macam tu. So dia macam attitude kita ni menunjukkan macam mana diri kita ni sebenarnya. Okay. And also, okay, self-expression function. This refers a little bit, relates a little bit to the last point, but basically this refers to how we act in a particular group. What differentiates us from other people is our attitude. Okay, and then our self-esteem function, this relates a little bit with our ego defense, but basically we have attitudes to maintain or to enhance feelings of our self-worth or self-esteem. So we tend to adopt certain behaviors to either maintain or also increase our self-esteem. Seventh and final function of attitude will be impression and motivation function. This leads others to have a positive view of themselves. Macam tu, aku lupa dia punya explanation, tak apalah. Okay, to sum up everything that I've said for the functions of attitude, why is attitude significant? Two things. First, it helps predict others' overt reactions. The meaning of overt, O-V-E-R-T, is apparent ataupun obvious. So, if we want to predict other people's punya obvious reactions to a certain situation or certain setting, kita boleh refer to attitude, macam tu lah. So it helps us to better understand people's actions and reactions. Second is to help to know how to change other people's attitudes. We know someone's attitude is like this. How do we change it? Okay, that is the significance of attitude. Once we know how a person acts, we can alter how that person will react or act in a given situation that we want them to act in. Okay, faham kan? Okay, panjang sikit lagi. Formation of attitudes. This refers to the process to acquire new information. There are three methods in forming attitudes. First is classical conditioning. This refers to association of two events. So we tend to associate one event with another event. Okay, to better illustrate, when we hear azan, bila azan berkumandang, we will associate the event of azan berkumandang itu dengan solat mesti dikerjakan. Bila kita dengar azan, kita fikir yang solat mesti dikerjakan macam tu. Oh, dah azan kena solat. Macam tu. Nampak tak? So, one theory in pertaining to classical conditioning is Pavlov's theory. So, he conducted an experiment with which involves a dog food and a tuning fork. So, first, there are two stages. The first stage, he will feed the dog after he has hit the tuning fork. So the tuning fork will produce a tune or a tone which will induce the dog punya macam mana? Okay, run that back. First stage, he will tune the tuning fork. He will hit the tuning fork, and of course the tuning fork will produce a tone. After that tuning fork produces a tone, he will then feed the dog with dog food. So dia akan hit the tuning fork, lepas tu dia akan bagi anjing tu makan. Okay, so he will do this for a period of time, and then what he will do in the second stage is he will only hit the tuning fork, but he will not feed the dog. So what happened, what he observed was, when the tuning fork was hit during the second phase, which was the phase that he doesn't feed the dog will salivate. This means that the dog has been conditioned to be fed after hearing the tune of the tuning fork. Macam tu. Faham tak? J. Okay, Alhamdulillah. Okay. Second formation of attitude is through instrumental conditioning. This relates to how we form our attitude to get rewards from other people. For example, if I say to my friends that I like football, they will get very excited and they will talk to me for 5 hours. So I would adopt this attitude of liking football in order to get a reward in the form of me talking to my friends for 5 hours. Macam tu. So kita akan ubah pendirian kita untuk dapatkan reward daripada certain orang. Macam tu. Third will be observational learning. This is one of the biggest methods of forming attitudes, forming attitudes, especially in kids, whereby they will observe other people who have certain or particular attitudes, and they will form their attitudes which will be the same as the ones that they observe. Contoh, mak ayah saya suka marah orang. Saya tengok pun mak ayah saya marah orang je kerja hari-hari. Hari-hari marah orang. Macam solat tau, 5 kali sehari dia marah orang. Lepas tu saya bila membesar, saya pun marah orang sebab saya dah nampak mak ayah saya marah orang, dan saya form attitude saya untuk marah orang juga. Okay, moving on to how attitudes guide behavior. There are two theories, which will be the theory of reasoned action and the theory of planned behavior. So the theory of reasoned action basically states that before we do a certain action, we will consider the causes, the outcomes. We will consider the causes and outcomes, or basically the implications of our act before deciding whether we want to do it or not. Okay, the second theory, which is theory of planned behavior, we also consider our ability to perform that action before deciding to do it or not. Macam tu. Betul kan? Okay. In how attitudes guide behavior, we also learn about implementation plan. So we consider the following situation. We want to present a new budget proposal to our boss. So before we present that budget proposal, we must first go through 3 steps. First, we must know the attitude towards that behavior. How will the boss react to our proposal of the new budget? Will he react in a positive manner or a negative manner? Second, the subjective norms. How will the boss think of other people? How will the boss think other people will think of my proposal? Macam mana bos kita fikir orang lain akan fikir tentang proposal kita? Okay. And the third one is the perceived behavioral control. Is the thought that how does the boss think we can, how far does our ability, how far is our ability to perform that particular action. Betul kan?
Betul.
Okay, macam tu. Okay, moving on to the final subtopic for our video today is persuasion. Persuasion, the definition is the effort to change others' attitudes through various messages. So, there are two steps of processing persuasion. First is systematic processing. Second is heuristic processing. Systematic processing involves careful consideration of message and ideas. So, we want to advocate for no smoking lah. Contoh paling senang, no smoking. We want to advocate for no smoking. We must consider how we present the ideas, how the message is being conveyed, and also we must consider the message itself. How do we present, how do we get the message across to the people we are presenting it towards. It involves the central root, which is the reasoning of the audience itself, whether or not our message is logical or illogical. Betul tak Imam? Betul kan? Okay. Okay, that is for systematic processing. For heuristic processing, it refers to the processing of the audience based on the communicator punya authority or communicator punya status. So, it involves the use of simple rule of thumb. We want to advocate for no smoking. So, we find a guy who has suffered through complications as a result of smoking, and what he will do is he will use his authority, his knowledge and also his experience from smoking to educate the audience on why they should not smoke. Macam tu. So it involves the peripheral root, which is the association of the authority being the one presenting the message. Therefore, the audience will more likely be susceptible or more likely be acceptant of the message because it comes from an authority. Macam tu. Okay. There are three elements of persuasion. First one is communicator, second message, and the third is audience. For communicator, they must have two things, which is credibility, their education background, why they are kenapa mereka layak untuk memberi message itu kepada anda. Itu adalah credibility. They must also have appealing qualities. Contohnya, for example, if they are handsome, if they possess good communication skills, their message can be easily accepted by the audience. So two things must be possessed by the communicator, credibility and also appealing qualities. Second is the message. The message must be clear in reason. We must be clear in the reason why we want to advocate for the message or we want to deliver that message to the audience. Second, it must be associated with either good feelings or we must use the more extreme way of fear appeal. So what is association with good feeling? Association with good feeling says that if okay lah, saya ambil lagi contoh tak rokok tu. Kalau kita tak rokok, kita lagi sihat. Kalau kita tak rokok, we go through less complications throughout our lives. So it involves the good feeling of having good health tau. When the audience gets the good feeling from our message, they will be more acceptant of the message itself. Second one is the fear appeal. Fear appeal is opposite to the association of good feeling, in which we will state the implications or the effects of smoking towards our body. Kita kata, kalau awak merokok, awak akan dapat ni, awak akan dapat tu, awak takkan sihat waktu awak tua semua tu. So that is fear appeal, in which people will have a fear of the implications of a good people will have the fear of that particular idea and they will avoid the idea at all costs. Okay, faham tak je? Tak faham? Kau tak faham yang mana?
So, teruskan.
Tak, kalau kau tak faham, mungkin diorang tak faham.
Imam
Lepas saya kena baca balik.
Okay, tak apa. Saya summarisekan. Kalau association with good feeling, kita bagi tahu apa benefit of no smoking. Kalau kita cakap pasal fear appeal, kita bagi tahu apa kesan buruk untuk daripada merokok. Faham? Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, the third one, final element of persuasion is the audience. The audience ada dua elemen, which is the age and thoughtfulness. The age refers to how the demographic of our audience. If the audience is young in age, they might be more they might be more inclined to change their perspective. Tapi kalau lebih tua, lagi susah untuk ubah perspektif diorang. Second is thoughtfulness. How the audience react to our message is also important, in which they, whether or not they will think of our message after the presentation or not lah. Macam senang cerita feedback daripada audience. Okay, macam tu. So there are a few tactics to resist persuasion. First is reactance. Reactance is basically our retaliation for the deprivation of our freedom. Contohnya, kawan saya suruh saya sapu sampah. Disebabkan saya tak suka disuruh, because it infringes my freedom, I do not carry out the task that has been requested by my friend. Second, forewarning. We know that we are going to get persuaded. For example, there's a company that opens a kiosk in the middle of the mall, which will promote their new resident. So we know that if we walk in front of them, they will try to pull us and also try to tell us why we should buy that particular resident. So knowing that in mind, we will try to take a different route throughout the mall to get where we want to go, and we try to avoid the people who want to persuade us. Third is selective avoidance. Selective avoidance, tak ingat. Thank you, Imran. Okay, selective avoidance. I will use the example of my friend asking me to sweep the floor. After he asked me to sweep the floor, I immediately go into my room and I lock the door. That is selective avoidance. I avoid hearing persuasion, or I avoid receiving persuasion from anyone else by shutting off my ears and quite literally shutting off my door. Okay. Fourth is counter arguing. Kita ada a set of principles ataupun kita ada an understanding of the idea in mind, and when people try to persuade us, we counter that by stating our belief or our knowledge in that particular field or in that particular idea that they're trying to persuade us in. For example, there's a doctor who wants to sell pil tambah tinggi. Saya sebagai orang pendek, saya tahu yang ketinggian ni based on genetic, tapi dia tak based on apa-apa pil yang boleh mujarabnya membuat saya tinggi. So bila doktor tu nak jual pil kepada saya, dia cakap, pil ni ada vitamin tinggi, boleh tambah ketinggian. Ada vitamin kuat, boleh tambah ketinggian sebab awak punya bone nanti akan kuat, so dia akan memanjang. Saya tahu yang benda tu semua tak betul pun. Saya tahu yang ketinggian ni based on genetic. So saya akan counter untuk resist persuasion daripada doktor itu sendiri. Okay, fifth is individual differences. This is a more subtle way to counter persuasion, in which we know we receive the persuasion but we actively ignore it in our mind because we have a different perspective, different point of view from the communicator. Betul tak aku cakap ni? Okay, so second last term for our video is cognitive dissonance. Okay, cognitive dissonance is quite interesting, and I will take the example, I will illustrate to explain. Okay, consider you are in a cult. So in this cult, your leader says that in 2 years the world will end. So you must do everything in your power to accept the fact that the world will end in 2 years. So what you do is you give up all your belongings. Basically, you prepare for the doomsday that will happen in 2 years, and when the 2 years is up, nothing happens. So because nothing happens, you will associate the act of giving up your belongings, giving up your sanity and all that Macam, wait, let me run that back. Because nothing has happened, you will try to justify your actions of giving up your belongings and all that to the fact that, oh, maybe God is satisfied with us because we have given up all our belongings and we have accepted our fate. We try to justify things that we have done to better suit our mentality. Okay, macam tu. The final term for our video is hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is quite self-explanatory. Many of you have known this term for a long time. I will only explain the meaning. It is advocating some attitudes and then act in an inconsistent manner. Betul. Saya cakap jangan merokok, tapi saya dekat tandas waktu exam saya merokok. Jadi saya adalah seorang hipokrit kerana kerana saya merokok tapi saya kata jangan merokok. Macam tu. Okay, itu saja. Thank you for watching 1 jam 50 saat. Okay, I will see you guys waktu saya nak final nanti. Bye bye.